Let's talk a little bit about email and email format. So these days, email is one of the most common types of communication, particularly in the workplace, because it's quick and free. And a recent study found that the average person receives 120 emails a day. That's not to suggest that you have to write or respond to 120 emails, but that's how many you have to look at and decide if you are going to read it in full, delete it right away, save it for later, if you ever actually get around to reading it later. So there's a 3-second or 10-second principle that most people talk about. Some people believe that only 3 seconds are given to emails, that you need to grab your reader's attention within 3 seconds. Some people are a little bit more generous and say that you have 10 seconds to win over your reader when they're looking at your email. So there are some things that we need to do to make sure that our email actually gets read. So the first thing is looking at the format. Make sure that you have all of the pieces that you need included and that it looks good in the actual body of the email. So first of all, make sure that you have a subject line. And the subject line that you see here is not good. So if you sent me an email that just said summary, I might not even open it depending on who the sender is. If I knew the sender and I worked with them or I was expecting something from them, then maybe I would open it. But if you hadn't interacted with me ever before or I didn't work with you, I would probably just delete the email assuming that it is spam. So in a moment here, I'm going to show you a much better subject line that you can use to hopefully get the reader to actually open your email. Within the body of the email, there are a few things that you want to do, including using paragraph breaks. So paragraph breaks are not just something in academic writing. It is actually something you can use to make your reader more likely to read your content. So this example here shows the entire email, just one block of text. And I can tell you that I personally don't want to read this, and I would assume most of you really don't want to read it. So sending just one big block of text means you're less likely to have the reader actually read the email. In addition, there's no salutation, no hi or hello or anything like that, which sometimes can be fine, especially if you're responding to an email or if you have worked with that person before. But generally, it's better to have something as a lead-in rather than just jumping into your first sentence. Another piece of the email that is missing is the farewell, where you would provide follow-up information such as how to get a hold of you other than via email, like a phone number or, if relevant, a mailing address. So now we're going to take a peek at a better constructed email that uses paragraph breaks and all pieces of the email format. So first of all, looking at the subject line here, we have a more detailed specific subject line. So summary of value of college education article. So I know that this is a summary and what the summary is of, very brief. This is known as signaling, giving a signal phrase to let your reader know what is coming. So if you're requesting something, you would say request for, and then a brief description of what you're requesting. Or if you're recommending, you would say recommendation for, and a brief description. And the trick is to be as short as possible, but still giving enough detail that your reader is likely to open the email. Then I have a salutation here. Most people say hello or hi. Just keep in mind that hey is very informal, so only use that with people that you already have a good rapport with, possibly that you're friends with versus actually coworkers. And then you can also include the person's name there as well if you want to be specific. However, if you're emailing them directly, then they should get the idea that this is specifically for them. And then I have a one sentence line that is what some people call the setup, and I call it the context, where you're providing information on what this is about. So the line here is below is the brief summary of the article that you asked me to read over and send a high-level overview of. So I am letting the reader know that this email is about a summary of an article that they asked me to do it, and I am sending it to them. And this is generally considered optional. However, it can really help a reader understand what you're trying to do, what's coming up next. And particularly if you are reaching out to somebody that you don't know, you have no established interactions or relationship with, you should include this so that they know why they're receiving the email. So I'll give an example. If you were going to send out a summary to all of your customers, you would want to have a setup or a context line that said, you're receiving this survey because you are a customer of such and such a place. The next line is a one-sentence summary of the entire article. And the really important thing here is that there's enough information that the reader knows what is being talked about. So they know optional, you can include the publication. So in this case, it's a Forbes article, that's optional. But the title of what is being talked about or summarized needs to be included, because otherwise it's like, what are you talking about? I have no idea what's going on. Even if I asked you, right, to do the summary and send it to me, I may have forgotten, right? Or I may not remember the exact name of the article. And then include the author's name, in this case, Derek Newton, so that you are saying this is what he's finding, this is what he's claiming, this is what his conclusions are, so on and so forth. And you can see that I am making use of one sentence paragraphs pretty frequently, because that is definitely okay in technical writing and encouraged. And for me personally, I am much more likely to read this if it is broken up this way, because it looks like less writing, even though it is the same amount of words, but it's easier to jump into, skip around, and find what I'm looking for. Then I continue on to some of the findings for the article, and I have made use of a bullet point list here, because bullet point lists are good. Remember, technical writing, we love bullet point lists where appropriate, and it really helps the reader be able to jump in, not be as intimidated by the amount of wording, and they can also keep track. And remember to use bullet points unless you are giving a sequence or level of importance. In that case, you can use numbers, but otherwise, for everything else, you would want to use bullet points to indicate that they're not in any kind of order or level of importance. Then I have the final findings from the article, and then I have my conclusion here, which is asking the reader to email me or set up a meeting if they have any questions about the information provided, a farewell thank you, and then my contact information. And here's another example of, again, the same email, slightly different formatting. And this one, because of the length of the email, this is actually a pretty good size email for what you're expecting a reader to read, how much time they have to put into reading and understanding it. So you can use what are called section headings, and those are phrases, usually not full sentences, but phrases that you put in a bigger font, and you introduce the section that is following with a super brief description. So it breaks up the text really nicely, and then it allows the reader to decide, am I going to read this section or am I going to skip it? So here, for example, main finding, errors and assumptions, and then the conclusion of the article, and then it gets back to my conclusion and farewell and contact information. And so that just further breaks it up and helps the reader decide, am I going to read this or not? You do also have the option of including information as an attachment. However, if it were something this short, I would encourage you to just put it in the actual body of the email, because people are less likely to open attachments than they are to just look at the body of an email. However, if it's something you want them to save, or something you want them to share with other people, or something you want them to print, those are good reasons for including the text as a attachment, like a Microsoft Word attachment, versus having all of the text just in the body of the email. So those are some decisions that you would need to make as a writer in determining what you want the reader to do with this information. All right, thank you.